Welcome back everyone to Gotcha Interact. Today we're going to be talking about Flins, and we were going to have this video out a little bit sooner, but there was a lot of things that have changed over the past few days. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in to looking at some things that are going to have to do with Flins before we actually get into talking about him. So the first thing we want to bring up is Moonsign. Moonsign is going to be the big thing with not great characters, so I'm going to read some things, I'll explain it as well, and then we're going to jump right into Flin's kit. Looking at Moonsign, when there are one or two Moonsign characters in the party, all Moonsign characters in the party gain the Nascent Gleam effect for one character that has Moonsign, and Ascending Gleam if there are two characters that have Moonsign in the team. So basically, if you have one character that has Moonsign in the party, you get the Nascent Gleam effects that are in the character's kits. Each character is going to have their own special thing that's going to be done when Nascent Gleam happens. Basically, as long as they're in the team, Nascent Gleam is going to happen. If there is another character basically in the 4-person team that is from Nodcry and has Moonsigns, then you're going to get the Ascending Gleam effect that is also in their kits. So each character has Nascent Gleam and Ascending Gleam. Think of the Nascent Gleam as like the base thing that they get, and think of it almost like a passive, and think of the Ascending Gleam if they get another national person from their nation, they get another Nodcry character, they get another better buff. Think of it like that. That's going to be a lot easier than trying to understand all the in workings and issues that kind of happen with this. Besides that though, now that we understand the kind of inner workings of Moonsign and this new idea with Moonsign and the gleams, let's go ahead and actually look at Flin's kit rift.
So we will have elements popped up on the screen here so you can follow along, just looking at the base version of Flin's kit, at least what we have right now, as well as multipliers, so you can see what those look like. Obviously, normal attack is nothing different from any other character. It's just very basic. He is a polearm character, and here are the multipliers for that. But then we look into his skill. It states that Flynn summons forth the ancient power concealed within his lamp and switches to his manifest flame form. This form has the following characteristics. Flynn's normal and charge attacks deal electro damage that cannot be overridden by other elemental infusions, and he is unable to perform plunging attacks. His elemental skill will then be replaced with this special or enhanced elemental skill, if you will, called Northland Spearstorm. Now, looking at Northland Spearstorm, it states that Flynn summons a flurry of spears in front, dealing AoE electro damage and causing his elemental burst to be replaced with a special elemental burst for the next 6 seconds, very similar to something like Veressa. The base cooldown of this enhanced skill, Northland Spearstorm, lasts for 6 seconds and will not be affected by other effects. Once again, there are the multipliers on screen for you guys to look at there. You do notice that they are a little bit higher than the regular normal attack scalings. So obviously, like any other character that gets an infusion, deals a little bit more damage, right? Now looking at his burst, Flynn's unleashes the true power of his lamp, dealing AoE electro damage, and after a short delay, dealing 3 further instances of AoE electro damage that will be considered lunar charge damage. Now here's where that Moonsign starts to come into play. When you have Moonsign Ascendant Gleam, if there are thunderclouds nearby, Flynn's will deal an additional 2 instances of lunar charged AoE electro damage. After using this special elemental skill, Northland Spearstorm, Flynn's elemental burst will be replaced with the special elemental burst, Thunderous Symphony, for the next 6 seconds. Looking at Thunderous Symphony, it states that you will consume less energy to unleash a special elemental burst, and Flynn's will deal a single instance of AoE electro damage that is considered lunar charge damage. Now, once again, Moonsign Ascendant Gleam shows up here. If there are thunderclouds nearby, Flynn's will deal an additional instance of lunar charge AoE electro damage. Now, quickly looking at his passives, these are really good to know. First off, his very first passive, Flynn's will gain a corresponding buff effect based on the party's moon sign. When you have Ascendant Gleam, or in other words, at least 2 Nodcry characters in the party, lunar charge reactions triggered by Flynn will deal an additional 20% damage. Looking at passive number 2, Flynn's elemental mastery is increased by 8% of his attack. The maximum increase obtainable this way is 160. And then finally, his third passive, at least the one that matters for combat, states that when a party member triggers an electrocharge reaction, it will be converted into the lunar charge reaction, with every 100 attack that Flynn's has, increasing lunar charge base damage by 0.7% up to a maximum of 14%. Additionally, when Flynn's is in the party's moonsign will increase by 1 level. Makes sense because he's a Nodcry character. Very similar to also Ineffa's, one of her passives. It's basically the same thing verbatim, just changing where it says Flynn's or where it says Ineffa's names.
Are you looking for discounts on your favorite games? If so, Lootbar has got you covered. Lootbar is the go-to top-up service for all types of gamers for all types of games. And with that, Lootbar also offers tons of different benefits like delivery within 30 minutes of your purchase, if not even quicker and within seconds. They also have secure transactions because, well, for all games, including things like Genshin for instance, you only really need a UID and the server that it is with as well and associated with. That means that there's no need for any passwords or emails, so those things stay out of other people's hands and stay with you. Covering gachas like Genshin Impact and Love in Deep Space to other games like PUBG, Lootbar covers your transactions the more that you are going to game. And what's the best part? New users get 10% off of their first transaction as well. To start saving today with Lootbar, go ahead and click the link in the description or in the pinned comment as well. Now, let's get back to the content. Yeah, there's very interesting things, obviously. Now that we've kind of gone over the actual kit, let's kind of talk a little bit. So when we had originally done this video, we had, much like a lot of other content creators, we're this close to be putting out a video, and we kind of held back because there were some changes, or at least not even really changes. There were changes to the Moonsigns, but it was a little bit more focused on the calculations that were given. So a lot of people started to actually give calculations for what they were seeing in the beta, and these speculations now we can kind of go into a little bit more, because before we had the thought that, almost like Kanish and Emily, was brought up a lot, and we definitely did bring it up again inside the last, well, what we were going to have as our last video, which was, oh, okay, these characters can be used separately. You can kind of use them together, or you can use them together. It's definitely a better idea, but they don't have to be tied together. And that is, well, we were praising,
that aged like milk.
Yeah, we were praising. We were like, oh yeah, not another Escoffier situation. And well, I'm sorry to tell you guys, it's almost borderline worse in this situation. The reason why I say that is because a character like Ineffa also shields, as well as has the new artifact set that could come out, as well as helps a lot of Flins damage. Now, I should probably explain actually what changed. If you look at the number crunching, and a lot of theory crafters have given a lot of numbers, if we look at what they've given us basically, and you guys can go search for that yourself, what we've seen is mainly the actual DPS for the team is around 100 to 105k DPS. Now that is for Flins, Ineffa, C6, Ino, and Sucrose. Now, we'll explain why Sucrose is in that as well when we look into some other team options and whatnot may work, but that is at least what that looks like. When you take Ineffa out of the team and throw a character like Eonsan or Yaimiko, Kujosara, Fischl in that slot instead, you're losing about 30,000 DPS, which is pretty rough. Now, I believe this is all C0, R0, and so you're using like craftable weapons for even the DPSs and the 5 stars in these teams. So it is actually on par with Natlan DPSs when you do something similar with throwing your craftable weapons in there, at least once again from theory crafters. So if that's the case, that's at least what we see here. So a lot of people are seeing this as he's practically locked behind Ineffa. And a lot of people are wondering, can I just pull Flins without him? And, I think personally for me, I'm just going to kind of go out there. I think you still can. I think you definitely can still play him, at least once again. This is version 1, so we might see some changes. But at least for me, I think you still can grab Flins. You could definitely just wait for a rerun if you really want to see if, Ineffa actually comes out with something better. But I think that it's honestly okay to pull Flins. Now, that's if you don't care maybe about Stygian Onslaught. You don't care about these super strong endgame things. If you do,
only care to hit like 70
you need to be going premium every single time. Yeah, exactly. And considering Rift, I mean, with Stygian Onslaught, I mean, we did, Dire with a Skirk team at C0 R1 for half the team, if not, the entire time. So that way, as long as you have that premium team, you're probably going to do well in Stygian, but if you want to do stuff like endgame, you're going to have Ineffa.
Yeah, pretty much. There's no going around it. I mean, you can think of pulling Flins without Ineffa, because if that is you keep wondering. Think of it this way. Imagine pulling Skirk without a Escoffier.
Right.
That's what it will feel like. Like, you can do that. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. There's definitely people out there that have Skirk and no Escoffier, and that's fine. But just know that without Ineffa, and without weapons and stuff, just a more free-to-play kind of look at the team, C0, R0 as well. Without enough, 70 to 75k is barely getting the last floor of the abyss. I think last floor of the abyss DPS nowadays is hovering around 80, give or take, just based on what is in there in general. So a Flins without a Neffa can probably barely do it. Barely.
Right.
So when it comes to Fearless difficulty and Stygian, which is more DPS than the Abyss, like you're gonna have, like you just said, you're gonna have to have an Effa if you even want to think about doing that. Obviously, if you go back to even the last Stygian with the Skirk clears, you know how people were doing the C0 clears and everything. I didn't see a single person do a Skirk clear on that Cryo boss without a Scofier.
No.
Unless they had cons. If we're talking a C0 Skirk with weapon even, a Scofier had to be there. Like, you just need to have that. And same thing can be said with the Mawika. She had to have her weapon. You had to have, you know, the Shalom and the Sitlali have their weapons, you know.
Yeah.
It all has to be there. So, in a very similar way, I think at the end of the day, Flins, yes, quote, needs an Effa if you are worried about making him perform at the level of basically what we have in the top 5 right now. Because even if you look at characters like Novelette Arlecchino, more so Novelette, because I know a little bit more about Novelette personally. He hovers around 100, 105k DPS, at least right now. Could be more than that, just thanks to Ineffa. This is, like, I'm going off of his team pre-Ineffa, like maybe one with Escoffier, or maybe just Kazuha Shilonen, just the mono Hydro Novelette. That's where he hovers around, and he's definitely like one of the top 5 right now. If you want Flins to compete with that, you have to have Ineffa. Now, the thing is, Flins with an Ineffa sitting around about 100k. This is also, once again, R0. What happens, Vixen, when you pull weapons?
Well, that's the thing. You get into the range, just like Natlan DPSs. I want to park on real quick. It is very nice to see, you know, we had a character like Mualani come out, and we had a character like Kanish come out, which, don't get me wrong, very good characters, very fun characters. And even back then, they were very good and very fun. We still banked on Novelette. We still banked on Arlecchino from Fontaine. You know what I mean?
Right.
Flins, and we are still banking, thankfully, on an extremely strong Archon in the past. You know, I'm not saying that we're not anymore, but I just mean to say that it is nice to see that even if it is the premium team, and it is kind of, you know, it's a little expensive, the premium team still, with this idea, Flins and Ineffa put together, is now immediately like Flins on release with his weapon or whatever can be, and the other Natlan DPSs with their weapons can be on par with each other, and that to me is just cool. Like, to actually see that happen.
Like Mawika and Skirk. Yeah, it's very cool. And obviously, like some of you probably seen there, well, the bosses now in Genshin are very dependent on team types and archetypes, and we have seen that. Just like,
yes,
especially starting with Skirk, and when they did that, like, it's the bosses call for a very specific team that, like, even when we get this cactus guy, Skirk and Mawika are great characters, great teams and stuff, great DPS, all of that, but they're going to suffer in comparison to Flins. Obviously, he will be the definitive best in slot.
And easy. I think in general, at the end of the day, my thoughts about Flins is he's going to be an extremely strong DPS. And even still, without using, you can probably still clear Abyss and still do well without Ineffa and keeping Flins in the team. But it's definitely a very interesting kind of idea looking at things. It really does depend. If you're, obviously, when he gets closer, we'll do a to pull, not to pull, on obviously looking at whether or not he'll be a character you should be able to pull. But at least for version 1 right now, if you are looking, and if you already have pulled an Ineffa at this point because she has been released, if you already pulled an Ineffa or you're looking to, Flins is practically the next option that you need to be going after as well, which it does suck that they have like a 3-week gap between them.
Right.
But at the same time, you know, if you want a very good team, that can still be done. The good thing about having an Ineffa, though, if you already have the Ineffa, is that you can still run without Flins. So that does, you know, that is something nice to keep in mind.
Right,
as well.
like if it's a totally different DPS, like Novelette, for example.
Correct, yeah.
Ayato, there's actually a pretty big list there. So that's why I think Ineffa feels pretty comfortable, where you can have her in many different kind of permutations of teams, whereas Flins, because he's a DPS, that immediately, just as this goes for most all DPSs. When you're a DPS, when you're an on-fielder, naturally the amount of teams that you can have is a lot less than someone that's a support. Supports can just go in so many different teams, even if it is a niche support. Like Escoffier has more team options, I'd say, than Skirk, and I know that. Why? Because well, she works with Risley. And why would you have Skirk and Risley in the same team? You could do that, but like they
Yeah,
both
it's
want the
Novella, it's a
on-field
bunch of
time.
other characters.
So
There's a lot of things. I think at the end of the day, though, he's going to be a strong character, and that's easily stated with how his on-par strength is with the other Natlan DPSs that we see, specifically, namely, the characters that at least released in Natlan, which are characters like your top 5 DPSs, including Skirk and Malwika. So at least being able to be maybe in that range of the top 5, even with Novelette, you start to see very, very nice idea with these characters. Either way, I think he's going to be interesting. It does suck a little bit, though, that he is pretty tied to Ineffa at the end of the day if you're looking to do a lot of things with the endgame content, and even see this, kind of idea with Lunar Charge. It is forced, and, once again, it is a little bit of an interesting kind of idea with what that looks like, but maybe in the future we'll maybe get some other characters like Columbina, which is another idea that people are throwing around. Columbina being a really good support to maybe upgrade the Ino that would be in this team, or the Yelan that would be in this team, and maybe even a character that we might get, that could maybe change that so that Sucrose doesn't have to be in that team too. Maybe a character that could increase that. Obviously there are team options with throwing in Lauma in the team as a 4th slot, to have some Hyper Bloom team thinging going, but that's probably going to have less damage at the end of the day, considering you're losing all the EM and you're kind of backing off the support damage to help Flins and Ineffa, so you're actually just kind of throwing something extra in there. So I would, probably watch out for that, but at least it, I guess, could be said it could be done.
yeah, I guess as far as teams do go, though, because of this is obviously helping Electrocharge. We're getting Lunar Charge now. So obviously, okay, Flins and Ineffa. Ino is a free character. We're all going to get her. Ino is going to be an easy slap into that team, and she'll help out. She is Hydro. She has good, consistent Hydro application, especially with characters like Flins and Ineffa. A lot of good synergy there. So if you have those 3 characters, who would become your, I guess, personal favorite Vixen for that 4th slot?
It has to be Sucrose. I mean, there's no other option. I mean, the C6 Ino is obviously there, on par with a character like Yelan, and that's why Yelan can now be slotted in here because of the change to the Moonsigns.
Thanks to the Moonsign,
you don't have to understand why, but it is now an option. And then the reason why Sucrose, and we've talked about this a lot and brought up to each other, obviously the huge EM buff, but also TTDS, possibly proccing some other buffs as well, maybe support
an
set.
Easy build.
Some sort, yeah, exactly. So you're just going
maybe
high
throw
EM.
instructors on her if you want, but like
honestly anything at this point, yeah.
Viridescent is still going to help.
Yeah, Viridescent's probably going to be strong. And then,
Yeah,
I mean,
if you
you
wanna
could
help
back that up
specifically
with Kazuha, you could back that up with Shilonen. Those characters are actually going to have less supportive capabilities, surprisingly, than Sucrose.
Crazy.
Not an insane amount from what, once again, calculations look like, but that EM buff does go an extremely long way because you have 2 characters that are doing Lunar Charge damage. And
it's Sumeru
EM
all over
is
again.
very, very hard. Yeah, exactly.
We're back in the Elemental Mastery meta. That's
exactly.
where we're headed.
And
so
it's a weird kind of combo.
I'm happy for Sucrose because Sucrose has remained to be a really good character. Kind of fell off a little bit with Natlan, I guess you could say, because even through Fontaine, I feel like she had a lot of good use. And here she is coming back again. What are they going to do with the 1.0 4-stars? They just keep coming back. We got still Bennett, just Bennett. So it's kind of crazy.
And we finally don't see him here. So here you go. No circle impact. Well,
yeah.
That's everything that at least we have today looking at Flins here. If you guys have any other thoughts, obviously this is version 1, so let us know what your guys' thoughts are down below. What are you maybe hoping for? What are you expecting maybe the other versions to change, do? Are you expecting them to drop his DPS, considering he is a newer Nodcry character and it'll be at the beginning? Or do we expect, 0.2, 0.3 to absolutely shatter, Malwika and Skirk's numbers to bring us into a new meta? What do you guys think? Let us know down below. Obviously, hopefully, what are you guys thinking of other teams that, are going to come out in the future? Are they going to be locked together like this? Once again, let us know down in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching the video, though, and we'll see you guys in the next one.